Recognize. Umbral Walker. D01. Recognize. The Caleb G. D02.
Hello, team. Welcome to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, episode 12. I am everyone's favorite sidekick, Caleb. Busy. Call back later. And allow me to introduce Rich. Cool! A tiger. I'll be right back. Howard! Thank you so much for spending time with us here today as we talk about Young Justice. If you want to get in touch with us, please reach out on Twitter. We can be found at the YJ Files. You can email us directly, whelmedpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, visit our website, crashingthemode.com.
It was so cool! The team's way more fun to hang out with in the league, and they go on these covert ops missions that rock! And I got nabbed by the brain, and I met this tiger, and...
Okay, I'm glad you had fun, sport, but it's getting pretty late. Brush your teeth and hit the hay.
With all that out of the way, let's turn it over to Rich for...
Hello, Megan!
Hey everybody, the title of this episode is Alpha Male. The release date was October 7th, 2011. In episode date, starts at September 10th in northern India, and then jumps to a couple weeks later of September 23rd and covers over to September 24th. The director was Jay Oliva, and the writer was Tom Pugley. Pugley? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Pugley? Pugley.
We have a history of not pronouncing names correctly on the show. We're okay.
It's a call out to the people that come on the show and correct us in person.
Please. If you would like to complain about how we've pronounced your name, whelmedpodcast@gmail.com to schedule a guest spot. Our schedule is open.
For you.
And let's jump over to mission briefing.
Just in time for your next mission.
All right, man. So the pre-credits shot is Gotham Mayor Hamilton Hill in northern India hunting big game. He and his group are about to shoot a tiger they see from a hilltop when the tiger gets surrounded by strange pylons that come up from out of the ground amid a field and knock the tiger unconscious, or at least pin it to the ground. Hill draws a bead on the unconscious tiger. He's going to shoot it anyway, but that's when a gorilla armed with a minigun and a backpack full of bullets appears out of the jungle and starts unloading on them. They do manage to get away.
We cut to the cave several weeks later. The Leaguers are there helping repair the damage that the Reds caused in the previous episode. And Connor overhears Calder telling Batman about Sportsmaster implying there was a mole on the team. Connor freaks out and kind of attacks Calder a little bit.
A little bit.
Very angry that he knew Red Tornado could have been the mole and put McGann's life in danger. Batman breaks up the conflict with a single word.
Being Batman.
Saying that Tornado is a Leaguer and will be found and dealt with by the League. Batman then sends the team to northern India to investigate a series of unusual attacks made by animals.
With Tornado gone, Batman says that the team will have a group of rotating mentors. The first of whom is Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, who has volunteered for the role. Unlike the other mentors, Marvel decides to go with the team on their mission to India. Unfortunately, the rest of the team takes Calder's withholding of information about the mole personally, and that leads to a lot of strife and issues during the rest of the episode. Once they land in India, the team splits up after several related arguments, not all of them about Calder, actually, into different teams to go do what they think is right. The separated groups all eventually get attacked by animals that are obviously mutated by the cobra venom that we saw in previous episodes. They are also wearing collars similar to the inhibitor collars that we saw in the Bell Rev episode of Terrors. Aqualad makes the connection with the collars and the Bell Rev inmates, and he and Captain Marvel manage to free the animals that are attacking them by taking the collars off. Unfortunately, the team split before McGann could set up her telepathic link, and all the comms are being jammed.
So Captain Marvel gives Aqualad some advice on taking command of the team before running off to save a tiger. The tiger leads Captain Marvel into a trap, allowing the pylons to knock him out. Meanwhile, McGann reestablishes the telepathic link with Calder, and after some debate, Calder takes back command of the team.
Captain Marvel wakes up in a research facility where we get our introduction to the Young Justice versions of the Brain and Monsieur Malin, who are classic Captain Marvel villains. The team manages to break through a force field that surrounds the compound to try to get to Captain Marvel, but they get attacked by more animals under collar control, as well as the brutal and heavily armed Monsieur Malin.
The team works together under Aqualad's command to defeat the Brain. The team finally learns the truth about the mole, that the tip came from Sportsmaster, and they agree that Calder was ultimately right to keep the information from them.
And our last and final scene is Marvel returning home, apparently, flying in through an apartment window into a well-worn apartment. There's an old man sitting on the couch watching a television show and reading a book. Captain Marvel is speaking to this older man, very familiar way, and we find out that is Captain Marvel's Uncle Dudley. And of course, we also find out the somewhat big reveal to some of our listeners. Actually, I'm happy to say that Captain Marvel is actually 10-year-old Billy Batson. Beautifully handled, particularly in seeing how people who did not know Captain Marvel from beforehand didn't know. It was fantastically handled. Of course, voiced by
Mr. Rob Lowe.
Mr. Rob Lowe.
So good.
Mr. Rob Lowe.
So good.
He was such a good Marvel. But we'll get into that. We're crossing the streams into Astering.
Well, you know what? Let's just jump right into feeling the Aster, because we've got a lot to talk about.
Let's feel that Aster.
Superboy, are you alright?
Fine. Feeling the Aster.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rob Lowe. I love Rob Lowe. Okay, I'm done talking about it.
Let's talk about Captain Marvel. I love Captain Marvel.
I love Captain Marvel. I love Rob Lowe as Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel was definitely a centerpiece to this for me. We're using classic The Brain and Monsieur Malin's villains, which are Captain Marvel villains. Whoever wrote this, the gentleman, I may have mangled his name, Mr. Pugley, is clearly a fan of Captain Marvel, and I love him for it. Not only do we get the more classic villains for him, and we get to see him in action and kind of get that introduction to Billy Batson as a character that comes back later in the season. We also get Mr. Tawny, which is so weird to me. Talkie Tawny. Talkie Tawny was an anthropomorphic talking tiger from the original Captain Marvel comic books. And they somehow managed to get Mr. Tawny into this episode, which cracks me up.
I'm going to call him Mr. Tawny.
I'm going to call him Mr. Tawny. Oh, and the Brain even says, the brain enhancements on this tiger has gone really well. Yeah, look at Mr. Tawny. It's pretty hilarious. Yeah, so there's a few things about the team that's pretty great about this episode, but I'm just so wrapped up in how Captain Marvel was handled and his childlike excitement and wanting to go on the trip. And some of it was accentuated, I have to admit, by Darcy Ross. We've had Darcy Ross on the show. We talked about this a little bit in her interview, but this thing that she had posted about, like, this Captain Marvel guy is kind of weird, but funny and cute. And as she was live tweeting, she's like, wait a minute, is he a little kid? And that's when we were all like, what? You don't know who Captain Marvel is? Oh my God, this is your first introduction to Captain Marvel. And then at the end, when you get the whole Dudley payoff and the whole thing, like, she just loved it. To watch that process happen was fantastic.
And if you did not know that Captain Marvel is a 12-year-old kid, going back to see the scenes where he is just full of excitement to be with the team and is just having fun, legitimately having fun, but also just giving Calder the brutal truth. The opinion of a child is so much more entertaining when we know who he really is.
Yeah, the fact that he's like, so he's having a good time and he's fun and he's silly. But I actually looked at it as he's also an experienced member of the League. Yeah, he's a 10-year-old. He's totally into hanging out with them, but he's got to do what he's told in the League, just like other people do, and be part of a team and make mature decisions that can sometimes probably, particularly in this world, being a little bit darker and shadier, But like where he just kind of buckles down and he says, yeah, Calder, none of that was their fault. This is all your fault. Not all your fault, but Batman takes command. He takes command. You're not taking command. You're hoping they give you command. And that's a very different thing. And I loved that scene where he kind of got a little bit serious. It makes the poignant, silly moments mean even more.
This was just a very fun episode, but it contained those really cool, important moments.
Mm-hmm.
That being one of them. Some of the discussions in the cave about the mole, the wrap-up of the arguing between the team and getting Calder back in charge. Those are all very important.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that the team did kind of break down a little bit in this episode, I think is very important. I mean, we're about halfway through season 1 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
The team established itself, has been successful. A lot of the episodes have just been parts of the team doing things. This is one of the first times recently we've seen the entire team doing a mission together.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of strife.
Yeah.
And I like it because it reflects kind of the reality of working together in a group. It's not always perfect.
Nope, absolutely. And it can be very cliche and not very deep if you are going to make it perfect. Like, oh, they work together great. Well, no, there's no growth opportunities, no change opportunity. In fact, I would even argue that Calder, even though he accepted the mantle of leader, he didn't pursue it himself. And in this episode, he owns that decision in a way that needed to happen, right? Putting that decision finally in his hands. Do you want it? Do you not want it? If you want it, you're a leader. You're going to have to be the presence for leading.
Right. When Calder was first made the leader, basically everyone said, hey, you're in charge. And he was like, okay, sure. This is the first time he says, no, I'm the boss. This is how it has to be. This is when he exerted his authority.
Yep. And I love that he said, look, you asked me to be leader. I'm doing it. And I'm going to do it until we're done with this mission and getting it done. And then if you want to choose a new leader, I will happily step down. But until that time, we are going to get this job done. And I think characters like Robin would really appreciate that. Be like, you know what? No, he's right. Let's get the mission done. And then let's talk about it. And I like it.
And even beyond that, he did demonstrate very good judgment about not revealing what Sportsmaster had told him right off the bat.
Right. He hadn't had a chance, I don't think. I don't think Superboy heard the fact that he had said Sportsmaster, right? I think he said something like, I had some intelligence that may have indicated we had a mole. I can't remember the exact quote, even though I just watched it. But there was no indication. As soon as he said at the end, where Robin was like, I need to know why. And Calder said, I got the information from Sportsmaster, that's why. And everybody was like, oh, I get it now. I get why you couldn't tell us. And we were all kind of being jerky. Sorry about that.
And I also think another great moment about the team and character development is the fact that at the start of this episode, we saw Calder talking to Batman.
Mm-hmm.
There was no specific attention given to any negative reaction that Robin had. And we talked specifically in a previous episode that Robin did feel some emotional problems with another person having that type of dynamic relationship with Batman.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Now, maybe it was left out simply because there wasn't room in the script for that.
Right.
But I choose to believe that it was left out because Robin has overcome that part of his character arc. He's learned that lesson.
Yeah, I think from a writing standpoint, the scene in that previous episode that we're talking about, which was Downtime, was, I think the implication was, not that it's entirely resolved, but at least partially resolved when Bruce offers to play one-on-one basketball with Dick, and they kind of get what that means for them. I agree with you, but I like the fact that they didn't go back and rehash something that they'd already spent time on.
Mm-hmm. This episode also had just a lot of fun moments in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that the collars from Bell Rev show up again.
Yeah.
Simply because that demonstrates, again, that consistency in the world of technology being tested in one place and being applied somewhere else.
And we saw Hugo Strange taking over wardenship, so that kind of ties in a little bit as well.
And, I just got to get to it. My favorite part of this episode, Wolf.
I'm shocked and amazed.
I love Wolf so much. I don't know why. He's just a big, mutated, genetically engineered wolf who decides to hang out with Connor.
Yeah.
That just makes me giddy with excitement.
Yeah. Wolf to me is a weird and interesting addition to Young Justice. I love Wolf too. I love the fact that like Superboy's player, if he's a character in a role-playing game, decided, I'm as powerful as I want to be as Superboy. I'm just going to spend my points on pets. But they didn't want to go the crypto route, right? So it's his version of crypto, but his version of crypto that makes sense within the context of the story they're telling, which is a mentally enhanced, the brain enhanced wolf who also happens to be brutally strong from the cobra venom. Like it all just ends up working out. It's pretty funny, particularly when Wolf doesn't do what he asks him to do in later episodes. Where you think they've got this bond and he can somehow communicate with him, and then you realize, no, he's just a wolf that's just hanging out with him. Smart, really smart wolf, but he's still just a wolf.
Yeah. There's a nod to crypto in there.
Yeah.
Because someone suggests crypto.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's dumb.
Isn't that already taken? Yeah. It's great.
And if I remember correctly, there was another, can we keep him? Line.
Yeah.
I think what I like the most about it is because in this little moment, it shows Connor being a normal kid. Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Yeah.
Because he just gets that moment of joy on his face. I got a pet. Can I have a pet?
Yeah.
Can I have a pet dog who's as big as me and as strong as me and he's giant? Yes, please.
Yeah, he's kind of like the toned down or teenage angst version of 10-year-old Billy Batson.
Yeah.
There's a tiger. I'll be right back. Yeah. Yeah, pretty fantastic. Mr. Tawny. I still am just rolling at the Mr. Tawny reference.
Well, if we ever get season 3, maybe there will be a Mr. Tawny and Wolf episode.
Yeah. Or Mr. Tawny will be up on bipedal legs with a suit on like he used to have in the comics. Anyway.
I'd be okay with that.
Oh, you know what? Like a Wolf Tawny episode would be pretty freaking fantastic.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we can wrap up Feeling the Aster here and swing over to our Canary Debrief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stick around. Class is in session.
Thank you, Bat Canary, for the introductions. So in this particular episode, we want to talk a little bit more about, this isn't as applicable to novels or short story writing, not necessarily really, but it is pretty applicable to running games, role-playing games. And that is the inclusion of a Game Master run non-player character. Captain Marvel here is an NPC. He's a non-player character, supporting cast character in this story. The reason we call it a Game Master specific NPC is because Game Masters run all the NPCs in the world, but in this particular episode, there's only one they mostly interact with. So there's a single individual who's on their side and with them the whole time that the GM is running, which makes it much more intense or deep relationship. And in this particular case, he's run really, really well. Captain Marvel is Superman level powerful, but he never takes over the scenes that he's in. He's there to support the team, but in this case, they kind of play off that 10-year-old Billy Batson, right? So Billy's not a leader. He's not an organizer of men. He's wise and insightful and powerful and strong, but he is there to, I don't want to say do what he's told, but like to be a part of a cog in a machine. He's happy to be a team member to help, not necessarily lead. And that works perfectly as this kind of supporting cast character. He never overshines any of the other characters who are technically less powerful than he is. But what he does do is allow a reflection point for the player of Calder to be able to talk to and speak with the game master, but also basically the larger world itself, right? To gain advice for his own character growth and have someone to speak with who doesn't actually make a decision for him. It's perfectly handled and balanced. When you have an NPC that's GM controlled, I don't even roll dice with the NPCs. Even in a combat, like this combat, you can easily just say like, oh, there's 2 giant mutated elephants. We'll focus on Calder, your fight. And we're just going to say that Captain Marvel's fighting this thing and it's going back and forth and he's losing and now he's winning. And because those dice rolls, irrelevant. Keep the action focused on Calder and use Captain Marvel for what he's there for, which is to introduce him for future episodes, to provide that talking point, and to support the team in this mission. It makes sense that they have the mentor, and from the character standpoint of Captain Marvel, being present makes sense.
It's also very important to recognize that a GM-controlled character can be abused very easily.
Very easily.
There have been many situations where a game has derailed because the GM's character took over the plot. The GM chose to highlight his or her character above the other players, made their character central to the story, made all the decisions about that character, or they made their character so powerful that combat and encounter situations became unbalanced and not enjoyable for everyone else at the table.
Creating the character is important too, like taking that step back, like the creation of Billy Batson as this Captain Marvel character, if we're talking about it from a gaming standpoint again. You've made a Superman level, power level character, but you've specifically made it so that he's a 10-year-old. So that you can use that as a role-playing premise to say that that's the reason why he didn't have the experience enough to know that there were collars. And that decision about, it's the collars and take the collars off, all that stayed with the main player character in the scene and in the story.
Right. And that demonstrates that if, as a GM in a tabletop game, you have chosen to include a character for whatever reason. And there's lots of reasons to do that. Maybe you don't have enough players and you want to maintain party balance. Maybe no one has chosen to play a certain character class and you feel that class is very important to the story moving forward. What's important here is that you allow this other character to exist, but you do not put that character in the spotlight.
Right. The same goes with groups of NPCs too. Say your players are in a group of, they're running a bunch of human soldiers, right, in a fantasy game. And they're going against a bunch of orc soldiers. Don't spend time rolling dice for the human NPCs attacking and damaging the orc NPCs and vice versa. Just have what the players are doing in the fight, how good or how bad they're doing in the fight, reflect the rest of the combat. If the players are doing really well and they're using lots of tactics and they're thinking well and they're using their supporting cast characters well, have that go well for the rest of the army. If not, then don't. Or mix it up. If they're doing really, really badly, say that the army is doing much better, but the PCs get captured, right? Or vice versa. The characters are doing really, really, really good, which is great and gets them through the spearhead of the line, but the rest of the army is collapsing. Make it interesting and twist it around, but no matter what you do, keep the focus on your players.
And this is one of those areas where sometimes you have to ignore rules.
Yep.
It's more important to tell a good story. It's more important to keep the narrative on the players and their choices and let the NPCs be in the background. So it's very easy when you are first starting out as a GM to say, okay, well, you've got 5 human soldiers that are level 5 and they have these feats and this strength.
Right.
And you roll initiative for every one of them and you take a turn for every one of them. But really all they're doing is standing in the background swinging their swords. As a GM, you have to realize me doing this is delaying the exciting parts for my players.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you can take it. So if you have a unit of, elven archers that your players have allied themselves with, make basic stat for the unit as if it's a single character. And don't do anything else except say, all right, a player during the round can move the unit. A player during the round can give an order by spending a bonus action or an action or whatever you want to do or whatever your action economy is for the game to allow them to do a certain thing, like a basic attack roll. All of the archers all attack the same target or they attack an area. Straight up damage, no dice rolls, here's the average damage, and just done. And basically giving another set of powers to your players and allowing them to use them during the round, right? And that means that the NPCs are rolling dice and dealing damage to the enemies, but the PCs are the ones controlling that action, not you, and those choices.
And I think it's also worthwhile to note that using a GM NPC, like Captain Marvel in this example, is also kind of a fun way to showcase what you can do with the game. In this scenario, Captain Marvel is significantly more powerful than the team.
Yeah.
So if we take this into game terms, I might be dropping a character who's 10 or 15 levels higher than my players into the game.
Right.
That's kind of a showcase to say, hey, here's what you're going to get to one day.
Right.
Here's how cool you can become.
Right. But keeping that NPC busy in the background, like, okay, this NPC you've allied yourself to that's more powerful than you is holding back a more powerful bad guy while you're dealing with the more important things. It's the way they run the show. The League is dealing with the blotting out the sun mission, and the team is sneaking into Cadmus, right? Mm-hmm. It can be the same thing even in the same fight. Your PCs are doing the important little quote-unquote thing of breaking in someplace or sneaking around the horde to get to the gem that's powering the whatever, while the 15 levels higher character or the more powerful character is helping to hold back this horde. But you don't need to roll any of that dice. Keep the point of view on the characters.
And that is the solution to making the game more dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I can say, hey, there's a dragon. Oh my goodness, you're third level, and here's an elder dragon coming over the hills to attack you while you're trying to break into the castle.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, here, your 15th level buddy is going to go off and fight the dragon, and I can describe that in the background. I can now bring in those elements of the game that are too big mechanically to deal with, but still make the game big and epic and exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I can use them as a background, a backdrop to amp the tension, even though they're not going to interact with the players trying to break into the castle.
Yeah. And it works even better if the fact that that person is even present is because of what the players have done, taken actions to do. The allies they've made, the choices they've made, the decisions they've made to help or to hinder or to whatever they happen to do. They can say that, okay, so we're not the 15th level character doing something, but the fact that he's here helping us is because we made the right decisions. And they can still feel a part of that decision-making process.
Yep, absolutely.
Love it.
Wonderful. Well, I think we can move on to crashing the mode.
Yeah, let's crash this mode.
Tell us something we don't know yet.
Sorry, BB. We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
So as always, crashing the mode here is a discussion of spoilers, Easter eggs, and foreshadowing found here in Young Justice and the larger DC universe. If you are experiencing Young Justice for the first time and you do not want to be told any of these spoilers and you want to experience those surprises for themselves, please stop listening and come join us later. If you're still here, the mode's going to get crashed.
Here we go. My favorite thing to find after the second, third, fourth time of watching the show is all of the Hello Megan references in the background. So when Artemis is cleaning and sharpening and doing her arrows in the downtime episode and it's on the TV, and here we get the same thing, but we don't get a voice that says, another episode of Hello Megan. We get what we later find out is the Hello Megan theme song playing in the background as Uncle Dudley is sitting on the couch reading his book and going from there. Just hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
I think another important reveal here is that the Brain and Malah are part of the Light.
Yeah. And if you go back and look at previous episodes, you hear the French accented Brain, which I think I made reference to before, and he's got no head. Like, it's just a shadow, but you can kind of tell it's just a dome. So we kind of knew, but now we're getting confirmation. And I just love this ridiculous combination of the Brain and Monsieur Malah. I don't know what it is about their dynamic, but it cracks me up, and it's so classic DC. And Malah is horrifying in this. Like, they make him scary good. The way gorillas should be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think the only other big thing that will come up later is about Captain Marvel himself.
Mm-hmm.
We find out later, still in this season though, that Captain Marvel is on the League.
Mm-hmm.
Billy is not part of the League.
Yeah, it's the very big discussion that happens, which is now classic scene, where the League is, once they discover that Billy is 10 years old, try to decide whether or not he should still be allowed to be on the League or not, in the League or not. Because they're trying to make choices of who they're going to accept onto the League, and they're talking about the other team members and their ages, and it gets to be a conversation about biological age versus maturity level, and Ms. Martian's 43 Earth years old, but Connor's only 16 weeks, so it's really interesting.
And it specifically impacts Roy, because as we've talked about since episode 1, Roy is driven by genetic design to want to join the League.
Yes.
So this debate is specifically about him and whether or not, as a Red Arrow, he is allowed to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're going to talk about this scene a lot later in the episode where it really happens. But I find it so funny that in a superhero cartoon where superheroes and supervillains are fighting, a scene that is basically a boardroom meeting is so cool.
So powerful. Yeah, we're going to need to talk about that in detail. Just that supporting meeting. Just the Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan refusing to let Guy Gardner onto the team. I mean, there's so many like nods that the old school readers know, or the people who really love these characters know and get. But the fact that they don't really address it any more than the fact that both Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan hate Guy Gardner makes, I think, new watchers go, what is happening here? I want to know more, right? Let's make this a full dynamic environment, which is just amazing. There's actually one other thing that I just remembered, and that is there's another reference. So in the Terrors episode, Superboy says to McGann, maybe I don't want to live in the world in which problems are solved in a half an hour. You're a fantasy world. In this episode, McGann turns the tables on him. When Connor wants to overly protect her because she almost died in the previous episode, she says, quit acting like a sitcom boyfriend, which is interesting, again, in retrospect, considering that's exactly who she wanted him to be, right? She literally named him based on a character from the sitcom she is modeling herself on. That's an interesting twist, I think, in her character persona.
Very much so, because it reflects a little bit more of her growth at this point. When we first see her, she is basically wanting to live out her expectations of Earth life that were developed based on her favorite television show.
Right.
And now that she's been on Earth doing things for so many months, she's starting to grow a little bit and break those boundaries.
Yeah, really interesting to me.
And of course, as we will see as this season wraps up and we go into season 2, she just shatters that mold and becomes a completely different character, completely her own person. And she's just drastically different and in such a more interesting and dynamic way.
Yeah, after terrible things happen to her.
Absolutely.
Poor Megan.
All right. So I think we can consider that mode crashed.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to some fan service here.
Yeah, I'm giving you this one. This one's yours.
Yeah, this time I get to share a video. We are again sharing another animated music video. And big surprise, it is by our old buddy, gtgrandom.
I swear we don't know this until we look up who did it. We just look at the videos and then we're like, oh, okay, so we need to figure out who did this so we can say it. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's this person again. We don't even know if it's a guy or a girl. Yeah, anyway, we love your stuff.
So GT, if you're out there, sir or madam, we are your biggest fans. We should talk. We talk about you all the time.
It's on record.
It is absolutely on record. This week, we are sharing a video set to Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. I love My Chemical Romance. Black Parade is one of my favorite songs that they have done. And this video is outstanding. A great use of the show to fit the lyrics, and it starts with a wonderful focus on Robin, because that does kind of fit the lyrics of the song. Outstanding graphics, outstanding editing, and of course, anything done by gtgrandom is just beautiful at this point. So
apparently that's the case. We're learning.
Definitely check that out. Of course, there are spoilers, as Rich is known to say here. We do not recommend watching these music videos until you have watched seasons 1 and 2. The link will be in the show notes and, of course, on our website. If you yourself make any fan art or fan products about Young Justice, please get a hold of us. If you are gtgrandom, if you know gtgrandom, please, let's talk. We feature everything here in the show notes and on the website as well, crashingthemode.com. We love featuring what fans do about this show because it keeps the community going. We all love it so much, and we love seeing what we all have to offer about it, what makes it so special to everyone. And with all that out of the way, I think it is about time to wrap up this mission and head out of the cave. Again, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you giving us your time today as we chat about Young Justice. Stay tuned for next episode, and remember to feel the Aster.
Also, hashtag keep binging YJ on Netflix. Also, I want to remind people to buy the comics on Comixology. You can buy the DVDs and Blu-rays, all of those things that send money to the creators, the publishers of this material, tells them that people want to see this material. And that's it. Stay whelmed, everybody.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our computer is voiced by Madison Ray. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.